Kate Falcher. Welcome to Irish Granny Tarot. It's time for our Saturday book, and we are continuing with the book we started last weekend, The Convoluted Universe, Book 3 by Dolores Cannon, and this will be video number 4. So the first 3 videos are last weekend, and now we're going to move forward. We're starting chapter 24, back to the beginning. The client that she has in this session is named Gwen, and she is in a trance. She sees herself floating over a world made of crystals. Then it's replaced by a blue pulsing light with bursts of energy coming out of it, like it's a heartbeat, like it's alive. And the energy source sends out this light and travels around. The light travels around and it returns constantly in a cycle. All is formless, all is different. It feels expansive, but it just feels like energy. And she says she is a part of the energy. So this pulsing energetic light thing that she's experiencing, she's a part of. She's seeing triangles everywhere and sparks everywhere. And she believes that they're sparks from God being sent out, directed by thought. And the phrase she hears is, "It's all that is." She says she stays in the energy until she's called to go where she's called to go. And she takes on the form of a woman, young, thin, olive-skinned with dark hair. She's wearing a short type of skirt dress thing with a small separate top, and her arms are bare. She has jewelry on that seems kind of Egyptian to her, and she's in a desert. She feels like she was never a baby in this incarnation, that she entered the body of this woman, and that this woman is a person of authority. She sees the pyramid, the Sphinx, the Pharaoh. She says she's at an important ceremony where women have all the power. They were praying to a source. They don't pray to idols. She sees a glowing sphere in this temple where they're joined together, and the sphere is suspended in air, and she says we revere it. It's rotating. It has many facets. She says we created this thing with our thought energy, and it produces energy. It represents the one source, unity, masculine and feminine. And she said what we're doing here in this ceremony is reclaiming feminine power. The energy fills them, and it is healing and rejuvenating. Only her group is allowed in, so there's some special chosen group of people. They fill themselves with the energy. The reason that they're a select group is that there's a fear that other people not qualifying for the group would be misusing the energy. They don't die. They're a different kind of being than ordinary people. She said that her type of being was transported there. They are more refined than ordinary humans. I don't think she means like their table manners. I think she means their energy. Their purpose for being here is to raise the consciousness of humans. They interact and are gentle with humans. Cannon has her move forward in time, and the sphere that she's looking at turns cloudy. And she believes this symbolizes maybe some sort of corruption within the group and a disunity. There's a separation of the male and the female and a loss of oneness. The sphere gets dark and then is gone. She says that they need to recreate the sphere. These beings need to recreate the sphere or they will dissipate. They eventually are dispersed. They lost their ability to create a new sphere. They lost their unity and their oneness, and they'll have to do it later. It will be something they'll be able to do later. They let their egos come in, and they lost their understanding of God. and I think this is reflecting what's going on Earth in general at her time, that they got wrapped up in their own power and ego. That they needed to recognize their power is within, and when all is one, we are closest to God. She wore a spiral of feminine divinity that connects to the masculine, and together through love is creation. She said, God is always experiencing. It's not good and not evil. It's only experience. Men are going to eventually realize that they need the power of women. They need, and they will value it. She came to bring oneness and to anchor feminine energy. The next chapter 25, a different law. I can't read my writing. A different law of creation and physics. And this is a session with a woman named Irene. She says she is in a place where it's all peace and all light. She calls it home. She's with others that she recognizes. She had missed it, so she was glad to be back. She had been helping to bring energy and strength and experience and to create, and it's a learning process. She sort of describes her process of creation. I'm kind of remembering what I had read. She said first they had to create a red pattern, and colors have a certain vibratory level. Each color is different, and they needed a red pattern for the certain vibration. And other people, other beings like her, created different color vibrations. They created the colors out of light. They experimented with it and played with it. And she says you can create a universe and you can create anything in it. You just have to know how to do it. Each color has its own vibration and its own sound, because sound is also just vibration. When they get these things together, these colors together, they sort of harmonize into a new sound together, and she refers to that as the music of the spheres. She says there's no one law of physics. Some universes operate, they spin, and some universes operate on a figure 8. There's no one law of physics. Each color has to follow its own particular color rules. And she said that these entities help to create creatures, plants, stuff that we wouldn't even know how to describe them as humans. We wouldn't recognize what they were. She says the soul starts out as a free agent, but as it collects karma, it needs guidance to get back on track. She came to a planet where some people had caused pain. She was disembodied, and she freed the victims to move on and to be not any longer trapped by the perpetrators of the pain that was inflicted on them. So everything created has a life of its own, even, she said, cars, pillows, everything. She is sent to places to protect and to help. She sends... Okay, she said that she watches over people and helps people. She names a particular case where she watched over a child that had bad parents, and she was there to protect that child. She says, I'm in human time now, like right now, while she's having this session with Canon, this entity is saying, I'm here now on the earth for the shift to help the vibration of Mother Earth. People with lots of accumulated karma are leaving. Advanced souls and spirits have been sent here. And for those staying, to help with adjustments to handle the energy. And if people can't adjust to the new energy, they will leave the planet. This woman going through the session admits that she never fit in as a child, and that she's here to help just by her presence, that her energy, the influence of her energy is enough. And she gets a break from, I guess, exuding energy through sleeping and meditation. She says she can do many things at one time, and she can be in multiple places at one time and in different dimensions at one time. It's hard for us to understand, and it's not necessarily something that she is consciously aware of as, what was her name? Gwen, I want to say. Irene. She may not necessarily be consciously aware of this. This is all going on underneath. She says the kind of soul she is, these souls help people awaken just by being here, by thinking. It's important not to get wrapped up in the emotions of the earth. And she says everything is light and love, and each one is learning his own lesson, and we need to do it without sadness. Chapter 26, the creation of the oceans. So Canon is working with a man named Pierre, who's French, but living in America. And he's burned out from all the travel that he has to do for work. And Canon says in this little aside that some people will create an illness to escape too many demands on their time and body, their energy. In a trance, he says, I don't feel solid when he looks at himself. I can't see myself. I'm everywhere. I have no form. I have no limit. His only limit is the top of the ocean where it meets the air. And he says, I am the water. And he talks about the creation of water. I am the ocean. There's no other life in the ocean. I am complete. I come from light. I come from a star. I volunteered to be part of creation. We are all part of creation, but there is no land yet. We aren't involved in that. He says, my job is to stabilize the water, salinity, the gases, the lights in the water, and then life will form from the ocean, and then land will come. So he describes the progression from light to water to life on the water to life on land. And I wrote in the margin here, this sounds very much like the description in that book on plasma physics, The New Science of Heaven, very much a description of the changes in matter from plasma to gas to water to a solid, and lo and behold. So we're part of a master creator who is the light. Master is used out of respect, but it's a cooperation of equal. And he said that after the land was created, it had to cool. He left after the water stabilized, and the next thing he knew, he was a beggar in India, living a life of pain and despair, so that the light, which he was, could experience the physical. And he had many limitations he had to experience that were extreme, and he had to do that to learn strength. He's been a woman in France, a creature on Saturn, which he can't talk about, so what's that all about? He said light is a whole. It requires experience, and it becomes materialized droplets of light. He calls them sparks of divinity. To experience and to gain information and to take it back to the source of the light. That's what it's all about. So he said the central sun, like not our sun, but the central sun is the source, is God. When the body dies, it reintegrates with the light, and it goes as a spark to a new experience. And his lesson was that he needed to understand his true nature and oneness. His physical issues were caused by his frustrations. His discomfort, it was the purpose of the discomfort was to get his attention. Anyone who has discomfort, it's to get your attention. And it would diminish slowly because it's accumulated slowly over time. His body has been adjusted while he was asleep to deal with his changing vibratory energy, and because the energy of the world is changing. Mass death serves to show us that we are all one. And one example is the tsunami in 2004. And I wrote Ukraine. His purpose was to bring light, and the light he brings influences everyone he contacts. He has put himself in a restricted situation with his job, and that's one of the reasons what he came to Canon for in the first place. She mentions, and it's interesting because Denise was talking about how Dolores Cannon looks at everything through the lens of her Christian upbringing. And it really is true. Now that Denise pointed it out, now I'm really noticing it, because in the next paragraph, she talks about in Genesis, they talk about the void and the darkness, which God is from, and then the light, and God talks, and the word becomes the water of creation, and he talks and the sky is created, and the water is created, and when he talks the land is created, and it also says let water bring forth creatures. So 6 months later, she does a new session with Pierre. And he finds himself sitting on a wooden bench with 1800 carved into it. And he's a white young man. It's peaceful. He's watching the ocean. He goes to a cobblestone street where there are horses and carts, and a small house on a small street in a very clean city. He says it's Brittany. He rents a room here. He's a sailor. He says, I'm a visitor from afar. What is he? Sailor. Oh, he is from a star. And he cohabits in an adult body. He did not incarnate as a baby. The other soul agreed for him to enter for only a short time. And so he's really not in control. He just goes along being from a star, this energy in somebody's body, sharing the space. And the body of the person, like the consciousness of the person, is not aware of this in their awake life. But this agreement has been made on a much deeper level, and he'll soon go on to another assignment. And it's important to remember these sorts of agreements are not on a conscious level, but nothing like that would ever happen if everybody involved didn't agree with it. He was pure energy before. He wasn't in the physical. He was part of a council of 9. They were supervising a group of stars to help give advice and direction. Not movie stars, stars in the sky. There is a non-physical blueprint developed and launched into the physical world, and he helps with that development. The universe is created constantly. The planets are part of it. Life comes and goes. He only counsels at a universal level, not on an individual level. Other people do the rest. Other entities do the rest. Universes are at all different vibrations, and they can coexist on different levels, which reminds me very much of what we read about in the Hermetic principles in the Kybalion. That these different levels can overlap and coexist, and he describes levels of existence similar to the Hermetic planes and dimensions. So each is occupied with universes, each plane and dimension, and each has its own planetary system with life forms. There are portals that those with knowledge know how to use to traverse the different dimensions. He is incarnate now for a short time, just for his own rest and relaxation, basically. He'll return to the council, and a spark of his essence is on Earth, and if his whole entire essence was on Earth, it would be too much for the energy of the Earth. He says life on Earth is hard because we have amnesia. That this all happens at once. The ocean, the council, being the ocean, being in the council, being the sailor, because time is an illusion and everything happens at the same moment. Pierre, in this life, saw a huge wave that no one else did, and he heard birds singing, and he said to remember the beginning, to remind him and to confirm the truth of the sessions that are going on, that animals have an elevated awareness more than we give them credit for. So part of him coming to Canon is to help to verify, confirm the truth of the things that she's learning in these sessions, and to remind us that there's more to animals than we care to admit. Chapter 27, the first creatures come. A subject named Melanie in trance was present at the beginning of the planet, the beginning life on the planet, dolphins and whales. She was light. She brought them, dolphins and whales, in golden pods. The pods went to the bottom of the ocean and they opened when the time was right. And they had been brought from a planet of blue water, and she helped these animals adjust. Then land began to appear. Lemuria, that people had bodies made of light, and they became more solid over time. It took them a while to get the air and the chemicals and everything correct. Melody had an event on a plane in 2001. She came close to dying, and she chose to stay. She actually left her body and for a while on the airplane, and then came back in with information. She doesn't remember any of this. Nobody noticed. It was just this weird event. Life on Earth came different, in a different way than thought. It was brought in gradually until it adapted. So our understanding of how this all evolved is skewed. There's more to it. And others, animals, etc., came from many different planets. Dolphins walked on the land. That's kind of a mind blower. And then they went back and forth from the land and the water. They were the first of the air breathers. Some birds came first, and they had a closer relationship with the water and air, some birds. Dinosaurs served a purpose for the atmosphere, and they moved on when they were no longer needed for the atmosphere. It was a purpose for their being here and for them becoming extinct. Chapter 28, the destruction of a planet. So a guy called Sam is in a trance, and he's in a plane looking for the airport. He was piloting a spacecraft, so it wasn't really a plane, it was a spacecraft. And he was surprised to meet up with he was supposed to meet up with his company, but he could see no signs of life. All he could see was a barren, arid area. They had all come, leaving the place, looking for any place to go. So they were fleeing one place, going to another. And he went for a purpose, but to do something. He left. Okay, they came here originally for a purpose, fleeing someplace else. They were all here, this company of people. He left temporarily to do something, and when he came back, they were all gone. They'd been struggling to survive, and he didn't know. They came from a place with transparent domes. They lived underground beneath the domes in multi-level cylindrical underground homes. And in this arid, barren place, it's an outpost, and his job was to fly from outpost to outpost and deliver supplies. And while he was gone, his community disappeared. He returns to his ship, and he uses his ship to fly. He uses thought to fly it. So he's pretty upset because they're all gone and this isn't good. So he decides to fly to Earth because it's close. But this is a long time ago, and there are only a few people, and they're very primitive. And the question that is asked is that these people that he sees are very early human beings, and they're black, and he's thinking that it's probably in Africa, and there is that, that belief. So he tries to fly to Tibet, where he knows they've been before, his people, and he finds some, but not from his group, from a different solar system. So he's finding kind of alien refugees from someplace else entirely. And they are more beings of light than he is, and they've come to help Earth develop. So both of these different kind of beings use strands of light to make anything with their minds, which is part of that plasma theory. It's so interesting to me. So one spark of light and creation forms around it. Whatever they're thinking about, it's created. They keep to themselves. They have this ability. They keep to themselves. He says that there's light in everything, including animals. And, I think it's just recently that they found that there's light inside DNA. Human bodies come from animals, but visitors use light to change them and to get more abilities and less hair. I guess, the evolution of us from early primates. I guess that's true. So different groups of animals come from many different places. And this group of beings uses light to adjust them to the living conditions on the planet Earth. They have, the beings have enormous energy, and they can manipulate reality with their thoughts. They mix cells to create different kinds of animals. So he returns to his original planet, and there's nothing left. There's no air. It's barren. It's all burned. He found a few survivors who also had been away and come back and returned to this, and they're all really sad. There was some sort of an explosion actually caused by the inhabitants of a nearby planet, and it destroyed the atmosphere, which killed the people on his planet. The survivors came back and found everybody gone, and they could not survive on Earth because Earth is too dense. So they decide to leave the physical and to be light beings again. The lesson is that they had nobody left to share experience with, that the importance of sharing. So this describes the end of life on Mars, that people were little gray aliens, highly developed, advanced light beings, and it had a cold climate. It was warmer to live underground. And that's what happened. The explosion nearby Earth was also affected by these explosions and hit by asteroids many times. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn were from debris. Also, Uranus and Neptune, and some of Pluto are pieces of this explosion. So this session, where he talks about this, kind of free associates about this, was in 2005, and a year afterwards, science said Pluto was not a planet, that it was a huge fragment of rock. It's interesting. So eventually, these surviving Martians obtained bodies of yellow monkeys to inhabit, and those beings their DNA was changed to allow this to happen. So strange. Huh? Anyway, he was homeless for a long time. He had to incarnate in a three-dimensional planet on, like, Earth, to be able to ascend back up to where he had been in the fifth and sixth levels. And he only comes back around millennia shifts when the most help is needed. The rest of the time he's not around. So between that, he is in the golden sun of love, he says. He's a light body. Light bodies always try to give 3D light, and they can't give enough light because it's too dense here. Earth is too negative. And he lost his connections to the source, and we lost our connections to the source. We don't even know really that we're light bodies, and we could raise ourselves up to the fifth, from the three-dimensional to the fifth, but so his lesson is to keep on the path and to open your light bodies to the fact that they're light. And service to self was his problem, and service to others is hard on the planet Earth. Okay, so the next subject sees, this is a new trance session. The subject sees a hot gust of air blowing over and destroying everything in its path, including the dinosaurs. Some areas it didn't hit, but all the dinosaurs that were left eventually died because there wasn't enough food left. Venus was once like Earth with beings. It was a sister planet of Earth. The atmosphere was destroyed by natural disasters, and it became uninhabitable. And the beings on it transitioned to a higher dimension. Then this new subject named Adele in trance finds herself very confused. She's under trees which have filtered light. Then she's in a cave, and so she's very confused. The narrative is confused. The sun is down, but there's light in the cave underground, and it's safe. And she cries because her home is gone. Somehow she realizes in this trance that her home is gone. Then she leaves and returns to her home, which is created out of silver upside-down pyramids that light up as you walk by. She says it's she herself is like a glowing smoke being with no form. But soon after she sees this, everything sort of just becomes one. Their underground home blew up. The creatures above the ground did it because they were always striving for more, and they played with the world. That's the description in italics. She and destroyed the world by pulling power from the stars with a crystal. And she describes them as being like children, not having any sense. This sounds familiar. This story keeps getting repeated. She and beings like her were a collective oracle. And they warned the people, don't do it. Don't play with this crystal energy. And they were dismissed, and everything broke apart. So she's lost, and she eventually enters a kind of cocoon state, a state of rest. So the book says, the canon says, canon was not able to get a clear explanation of what's going on in this session that she can summarize, but those are the fragments that she got from this woman. The warnings of the collective cave dwellers were dismissed, and there was an energy that people tried to fool with and didn't have the ability. They were greedy, the people on the surface. And Adele is very upset. She feels responsible for not having prevented it. And this had troubled her all of her life, all of her subsequent lives on Earth. And the reason canon mentions this, not only for the interesting part of the narrative, but the fact of coming in and going into a hypnotic session with canon often helps these people figure out why they feel the way they feel when they're conscious. Okay, We're on section 7, The New Earth, chapter 29, The Coming Shift. From book 2, which we've done, Canon told of a subject describing the evolution of the new Earth, that it would divide into two, and that people on each part of it would not be aware of the other. Those with a higher vibration would be on the new Earth and in a higher dimension, and the rest would be left back on the old Earth. This raised the question, how could people not be aware that bunches of people are gone or whatever? So Canon had postulated a few explanations. People have decisions to make, and we've come to a crossroad, changes in life paths. And even the path you don't take has become a created reality by you considering taking it and choosing another. And it plays out, that scenario of you not being there. And this happens for every single choice and every single decision, large and small. Every single decision creates a universe with another you. So we aren't aware of all this. Our minds can't grasp the complexity of this, but that's like the bare bones explanation. During this shift, this process, we're all receiving bits of this information to understand as best we can. And some people are going to understand more or differently than other people, where you are in your journey. And as our minds expand, we're ready for more information, we'll receive more information. This is called awakening, and it happens in increments. As quickly as we're able to process the information, we get more, we get more, we get more. So the new Earth relates to the creation of parallel universes and dimensions. One Earth will have one path, the new Earth will have a different path on a higher vibration. And it's up to each of us and free will. It's never happened on this particular scale before, where an entire planet is shifting all at one time. Then she describes an earlier shift. She was told there had been a shift before that involved groups of people. And we recognize it as a mystery. We are really aware that they disappeared, but we just don't know what happened. These are groups of people who shifted. And an example is the Mayans. Their calendar just stopped. That was the end of it. What happened to them? And the same happened to certain Native American tribes. A woman named Suzanne described this in a trance. She was one of their Canon's subjects. She described seeing a wooden stairway and a log structure, maybe a fort, and there was no one there. It was built into the side of a mountain. It was Native American, and it's no longer in a three-dimensional place. It's physical, but it's on a higher plane. Okay, this is hard to describe. The vibration of the earth is parallel to this, and this is a parallel existence, like an overlay on a higher vibration. And Suzanne sees herself as a young male who's into healing and spiritual things, and comfortable at home in a woven tunic. And she says that we were once of the earth, but now we're of a higher vibration. We're a band of people who changed frequencies. We worked toward it as a group, and we transcended as a group. They had wise teachers for generations. They all meditated together. They shifted back and forth for a while as individuals and then as a group. There were only a few hundred of them, and this was very long ago. Maybe 3 generations ago. They'd come to Earth as a colony, and they knew that they could mentally transport themselves. The Earth was fine for them, but the spirit always wants to evolve and explore. And so they were here, and then they left. So she says to Canon that everybody is capable of doing this. Some of them are now being asked to come back because they have compassion for the people of the earth. They're now living in a less dense existence. It's not 100% physical. It's not on the spiritual plane, but it's somewhere in between. Then they don't die. There's a transition to their physical molecules. They change their molecular structure, and we're able to take their bodies with them doing that. They've been telepathically told there's a need for help here now, and it's a huge advantage to have had that heavy earth experience. They will come in as babies. People need to learn about love and forgiveness, they say. People got way too caught up in survival. There are internal programs in human beings. Some will be activated. They're triggered by association to certain people and events. This is why these people with energy help. Just by proximity to their energy, our internal programs can be turned on, should we be ready for that. But they also trigger events like quakes and storms. It's like time release information being triggered. Ceremonies in the past, in antiquity, were also big triggers. So like shamanic ritual and stuff would trigger people for their evolutionary purposes. Canon was told that the group that came was from a source, the source, and was actually one soul mind that splintered, because we're all one. So this is the time for the need for ascension, she's told. And she reminds you constantly through this book, don't fret if you don't understand what it is we're talking about, because most of us won't understand it. We're not ready yet. It's like, I always say, it's like trying to teach your dog algebra. Not going to happen. So each early group of explorers were paving a path, and they were back and forth, some of these evolved spirits, and they helped create a knowing. They still exist here, and therefore, because of the work that they've put in and their presence and their having been here before, they've paved the way for people coming after them. Suzanne has traveled a lot in her life here on Earth, incarnated as Suzanne, and it reflects the fact that she's traveled vast amounts. The purpose of her travels on Earth as a human being, as Suzanne, the purpose was to leave a vibrational trail for others. She's spreading the energy, and Canon was told that she also does something similar, and that if she thought about a place where she had been, her energy went there. That's so interesting. So now we're on chapter 30, Help in the Time of Chaos, or the Old Earth. So Canon is told that she has to ask the right questions in the right way to get the information that we need to hear. We're ready to hear. So if it doesn't occur to her and she doesn't know to ask it, we're not ready. So she's told that she needs to ask much more generally applicable questions, not just personal questions about only the subject, that things that will affect everyone. The subject is here. In other words, this person goes to Canon not only for personal reasons, like I want to quit smoking, or I'm anxious, or panic attacks, whatever, no, but also because there's a larger reason for the greater good of humanity, for them to interact with Canon and for her to get this information to help us all in a time of huge change. The vibrations of the earth are speeding up, and guess what, you guys? There's more turbulence. What a surprise. We need to be grounded. There's going to be much turmoil, and therefore we need to establish our own sense of stability. And hard as this is to hear, and Canon reminds us that nobody wants to hear it because everybody's all worried about surviving. And she says people are going to be lost and confused and in pain, and there's going to be a great need for understanding, and people are going to, as she puts it, leave. And I don't think she wants to use the D word, but the point she makes over and over and over is there's going to be turmoil, there's going to be difficulty, it's going to be hard. We caused it, and we're here causing it and suffering through it for a karmic reason. And we all tend to be like, oh, let's start collecting cans of food and how are we going to survive and all that kind of stuff. And she says, really, your reaction needs to be on a much higher level of understanding. Not everyone is going to come out the other end, It's just the reality of the situation. And individual fates depend on individual lessons. And easy to talk about, not so fun to go through, but it's really important to get your head in the right place. Get your head and your heart in the right place and understand, okay, the outcome of this is 100% predictable for everybody. We inevitably all end up the same way. The process of how you get there depends on the lessons that you need to learn and your purpose for being here. And embrace that rather than resist it. Nobody lives forever. Embrace why you're here, your purpose. The turmoil will be hard, and as she said, we caused it ourselves. There's a coming through of new energy and new beings that people are not used to seeing. And it will result in chaos. So I don't know what she's trying to imply there. 2 + 2 = UFOs. That's the only thing I can think. So she says that we need to, those of us who are hearing this now, just need to get grounded and stay calm and give reassurance in the confusion. The physical body is going to need to shift in its energy, and it's easy to theorize. It's easy to just chat about it. It's easy to read the convoluted universe. It's a whole other thing to go through it. And the more we prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally, the better off we'll be, and spiritually. She said there's going to be huge chaos and shock at the process of change. Change is always difficult. This is a paradigm shift. So it's one thing to understand about the change, and it's a whole other thing to be calm in the middle of chaos. And our most important job, if we can do it, is to transmit calm, to keep a grounded energy. It's not our job to force people to listen. It's not our job to proselytize this. We can put it out there, like we're doing right now. I have a great book you could read, that kind of thing. Then it's up to the individual to process it, digest it, understand it, and prepare. And it's our job, if we can muster the energy, to transmit calm. And when the shift comes, some will choose to go to the higher vibration of the new earth, but only if they've raised their own energy. It might be too late to suddenly decide at the very last minute, wait, I changed my mind, I want to go to the new earth. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to have been working on your energy. So in the old world, the old earth will be those who are not ready yet. No judgment, different path, same destination. So those who are not ready yet will stay, and volunteers to help them. The time for transformation happens over years, and those who are being called to rise up and give assistance should be aware and be present. So stand your ground spiritually when it comes to choices. You will face choices where your soul could go either way. Choose wisely, make a difference, and raise your vibration. I think she's saying, careful how you vote. So you may have a higher vibration to make the shift, but you also must have the courage to jump. You may be able to extend a hand to help someone else jump to a higher vibration. The turbulence has begun, and let me see, where did I put my number one? 2008. The turbulence has begun, and everyone on the planet is going to see it. The chaos, people running around in confusion, and I wrote in parentheses like Katrina, and it hasn't all happened yet. It will be the time of the test of the strength that needs to come forth for those here to help. Those in power are aware of all of this. This is not news to, them. And they just refuse to accept it, refuse to care about it. They refuse to admit that they're no longer in charge. They cling to the old ways. And so what does that do? It causes confusion and suffering. So they keep fear high on purpose to keep the vibration low to prevent the change. So they've always maintained power with fear. I mean, history, right? That book, Kings, Conquerors, Psychopaths. Our technology has increased the fear, just social media, for example. And even natural catastrophes are intended to increase the fear. But the fear is dissipating. What we're really seeing is the efforts of those in power to keep the fear up. And that's why things have gotten more difficult, because they're trying to maintain control. This is a cleansing, and people are being forced to face their own worst demons. I'm speaking metaphorically here. I'm not getting all Book of Revelation on anybody. So those in power will push to the other extreme to keep control with fear. And many people aren't prepared for how far these people in power are going to go. Which is kind of my purpose on this channel, is not to get people frightened, but to make people aware. And it's a fine line. It's a fine line for me too. But we need to be aware. Media keeps us focused on the fear. And it's important instead to focus on the positive things. And I don't mean, and canon doesn't mean ignore the difficulties, but acknowledge them and then think about, okay, how can we counteract that? Many in the uninformed masses simply just buy the fear and freak out and, go out and buy guns. That's what they do, not what I'm recommending, believe me. So, where am I? Okay. So it's no longer a time of middle ground or neutrality. You can no longer put your head in the sand and just say, oh, well, this is not really happening. This is a time of choice. And let's see what she has to say about it. What did I do with my glasses? Oh, God. She says, you said earlier that we would be here whenever the chaos breaks out. Would this be caused by disasters? And the answer from, is the disasters and the breakdown of the structures of government and the breakdown of the safety net that most people feel they're part of, such as their social security and their paychecks and their jobs and their religious beliefs. If and when ships and or other things like that begin to become part of the consciousness that many are not prepared for, then this is especially true. Therefore, they may run around in shock and confusion, unsure as to what's real and what is not. The structure of government is breaking and will break even more to a point of chaos, like a domino effect, like a crumbling. And, what they're talking about here, Dolores Cannon says, if the ships arrive, what would be their purpose for coming? The answer is they're always here. It's only a time for them to become visible as the permissions open up, because it's a time of not only free will, but also a time for others to claim their place in the new world. Not just humans, but others who also belong here but are on a different vibration. So partly it is not that they choose to become visible, it is partly that the energies make them visible. Isn't that interesting? Cannon says, I'm aware that they've been here. I've been working with them. I know they're positive. I had no problems with them. And the answer is, by they becoming visible and part of the consciousness of people, and the government's crumbling, and chaos, and natural disasters, you can see how the majority of people will be completely shocked. And their religions and their idea of a structured life will be brought down. So now they would have nothing to cling to. This causes a great deal of fear for those who have not stepped out of their own house. The fear could lead to madness or schizophrenia or other types of reactions. And it is at that time and that kind of reaction that will leave people most vulnerable, where you can be of most service. Pull up your drawers and get ready is what she's saying. What we can do. Not losing your mind. Stay calm. It doesn't matter what you do. You also may not know what to do. You may not know what to make of what you're seeing, but you are prepared. Trust that things will be okay. You aren't crazy. UFO invasion, false flag, government manipulation, government breakdown. Just be your own center of calm. Other people will be completely unprepared. And she's not talking stockpiling water. She's talking prepared here and prepared here. And they're going to wig out. And I can attest to that. He mentioned some of this stuff to my neighbors, and they look at me like, oh, God, you are something else. So this is a very one-of-a-kind soul journey. It's for each individual to decide which direction. So we choose to be here now for the soul experience, for the lesson that it offers us. The higher vibrations are changing our DNA, which is dormant. And, that junk DNA, it's being activated. One vibration will not be visible to the other, not separate, just on a different vibratory plane. So what they mean by that is one set of entities who have a higher vibration could be living on a side by side, but on a different vibrational plane and therefore not visible. Chaos is the breakdown of belief systems, and people will either move with the changes in belief or not, and you can't change others. They have to be ready. You simply slow yourself down if you're wasting energy and time trying to convince other people. Best to be prepared your own self. So she says that we're here during a time of change, and these are these entities. We're here to keep our energy grounded. It's not so much to be with those with a higher vibration. Those with a higher vibration, the visitors, they can fend for themselves, and it's not for those who are in deep negativity that we must be next to either. It's for those who are in the midst of confusion but are perhaps ready to make a change, make a jump, that we are most helpful to. Cannon asks, does that mean we have to stay with the old world as workers? The answer is you will only stay until it's time for you to go. And during the time that you stay, you do your service. When it's time for you to go, you will know, and then you will no longer be available to those people. It's not a matter of how long should I stay. That is a question that is answered eventually. It's a matter of knowing what to do while you are here, which I was very ineptly trying to paraphrase, which is be less concerned about your fate and more concerned about your day-to-day process. Let's see, I think this is interesting. It's not from one day to the next that this change is going to happen. It's a process. Eventually it will have happened and we'll realize. So long as you're here, keep grounded energy for those who are in confusion. And when the shift happens, it happens. And where you end up depends on how you act today. What we are doing here with these topics on this channel are just trying to shine a light on the confusion and not contribute to the fear, and sometimes not always having a full understanding because it's a process for all of us, but we're trying to shine a light. So when your vibration reaches the correct frequency, you automatically go. Even if you want to stay, you can't. So I'm going to end here. What did I do with my pen? And we'll start our next video with this next section of the book, Song of Foil.